And we looked. He wasn't supposed. To do with him, right? And you look at the rest of the world as a whole, and you're like, wow, it really doesn't, right? He is small in this world. He is not the focal point. He is not the thing that everybody's searching out. His actions create attention to him, so he and his son become a focal point. But yeah, that beginning was hard earned, I think, for us, that we really had to go back and forth a lot.
It works so well, and it's even the reveal. I feel so like. For me, I went and played the 2.5 hours down at Sony Santa Monica, right? Yep. Awesome stuff. Really enjoyed it. Come back, tell everybody how amazing it is. But I always thought it was an interesting place to cut when we cut, because it cuts right when we come back with like the mystical warthog back to the witch's tree.
You see Charlie.
Yeah. And
so you had got to the fight already? You'd gone to the Baldur fight?
Oh yeah, that's so early.
Cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
But I got through all of that, and then when I played through all of it again at home. When you leave the tree is when they're like, all right, here's the compass. And I was like, oh, and I texted Aram, our PR guy, and I was just like, hey, I'm really still awesome. Now I see why you cut where you cut, because you didn't want me to know that. And then playing further, and when you get to Lake of the Nine, and then a little bit further when it's like, all right, cool. Now it's really open.
Yep.
Now it really is go do what you want. And I texted him again. I'm like, I was wrong to even say that was what you were hiding. Like it's just, you gave the breadcrumb of this, cool, and then to go there and then finally blow it up even longer, further out, to be like, this is what everything is. It's like, wow, I did not expect this.
Born in paranoia as well. Like, that wasn't the plan. The plan was to stop at the serpent reveal, and it always felt weird to me. I didn't know why, but I had this feeling in the pit of my stomach constantly, like, am I doing the right thing? And I'm like, no, I gotta trust it. This is the idea. And I think it was probably 2 weeks before the preview event that I was like, just came to the office and said, no, we can't do it. We have to cut earlier. And we don't have a way to do it. That was the problem, is that so much of this game was right at the very end, getting everything done. We did not have the bandwidth to actually create a demo stop. So it was basically like, all right, well, the cinematic is so long that we're able to kind of say, all right, well, we can always stop people. We can see the cinematic starts and then like go over to them and tap them on the shoulders, simply because we didn't have the bandwidth for any programmers to put in an actual demo stop. And I kind of just ruffled some feathers and went in and it's like, this is what you got to do. And everyone's like, well, wait a minute, we're planning on doing this. We got to show people more of the game. They would need to see this bigger. I'm like, no. This is the surprise. This is a surprise that we want people to have when they're actually reviewing it, to go, oh my God, right? That this is, I didn't realize it was going to open up like this. And after passionately pleading to several people and everybody kind of going like, no, I think this is right. Yeah, I get it. It makes sense. I had to then figure out how we're going to do it. And Jeet Shroff, one of the lead gameplay engineer, had figured out the idea that, all right, what we're going to do is just introduce a crash. So when it says the demo's over, he just introduced a crash specifically at that point. So it's like the most ghetto version of like a demo ending ever.
It's awesome.
But it's still like that is, I think, the testament of like one, trusting your instincts and being open even at the last second to change something.
Yeah.
Like that I think is the hallmark of what we do, but also, you know, like our homies over at Naughty Dog, man, those guys are,
Hacks.
they are absolutely.
Oh no, they're good. I'm sorry.
They are absolutely wonderful. Look, these guys are willing to throw out things at the last second. They're willing to go re-examine something right at the final bell. And it's inspirational for me when I hear some of the stories of what they've done to make those calls, to kind of go like, all right, it gives me a little bit more confidence to say like, I need to trust this. I need to trust it, even though if everybody, all 300 people are looking at you going, you're an idiot, don't do this. Like if it feels like the right thing to do, you got to trust it. And then if it fails, at least it's your fault, right? As opposed to, oh man, I wish I would have done this, you know?
Yeah. Have you or other people on the team had conversations or felt offended by the reaction to God of War PS4? Because I feel a lot of it is people like me of like, hey, Kratos always sucked as a character. I was never into him because of this, that, or the other. This game is awesome. And I'll just keep throwing the heat on myself of me being like, I look at this game the same way I looked at Horizon last year, where
That's a great game.
I've known the Guerrilla folks forever. I've covered PlayStation for more than a decade now, and I've known Herman forever, and it's always broken my heart that these awesome people didn't get the love, the limelight, all of this like attention in the great scores until, and then Horizon came and suddenly it was like, whoa, look at this, these Guerrilla guys had, I'm like, no, they've had stuff for years. Yeah. It's the same. I feel like there's something here with that too, where you guys, Sony Santa Monica, have definitely stepped up, I feel, a level in terms of the way people think of your studio now, in the same way people thought of Guerrilla, in the same way people thought of Naughty Dog with Uncharted 2 when that really came around.
I don't think, no, not offended, but like, I think we have a fairly good sense of self to understand where we were. You know, I mean, I always compare it to the idea that we, you know, our early games were in our college years. You know, the idea of we're taking on the industry, you want to make the best thing. And I fault myself for not being, I think, at that place in my career to look deeper into something, to actually see the forest for the trees. Like I know that everything seems to happen at the time it's supposed to happen, right? But I look at it as like Janusz Kaminski. He is a director of photography whose first film was Cool as Ice, starring Vanilla Ice.
Sure, yeah, of course.
He also then went on to DP Schindler's List and won an Academy Award. So I feel like we all, in our journey,
we all have our Cool as Ice.
We all have our Cool as Ice, and I don't necessarily think our early games were Cool as Ice. I think they were more of our beginnings, right?
I think my Cool as Ice is working here at Kind of Funny, and then eventually
you're eventually going to go off your Schindler's
We'll
List.
see.
It's going to be amazing. Right? I thought your Cool as Ice was being a football player earlier with an Australian accent.
That's it.
Right? So yeah, I think that for us, our past defines who we are, and we are infinitely proud of it. I don't think any of us would go back and put flashlights in the soldiers' hands or anything like that. But at the same time, I don't think any of us would go back and make the same game, right? They exist, they're there, and if you love those, you can go back and continue to play those. But as we move forward, we are influenced by the journey that we're on in life.
I love how this game kind of addresses all that via the story. I can especially think that there's the moment of this game when you get the blades, and I love.
Hello, old friend.
Yes,
I love.
Oh my god!
And I've never cared for any of the God of War games. I played a little bit of part 1, and I didn't even try part 2 or 3 just because they didn't appeal to me. During those days, like, I didn't have a lot of money to buy video games. So it was like Metal Gear for me. Metal Gear. That's really all I played.
That's also a good game, though.
Sure, yeah. But yes, to go along with this Blades moment, like for someone who has no past with it, I was suddenly like, oh my god, Kratos, the blades are back. Like,
That's the thing is like you made it all, like, contextualize it in a way that it all mattered, even if it didn't before to us. And I love how long that moment took. Like, I love the build up to get him.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you for saying that.
Because it's that moment. It's the moment where you're like, oh, they're going there. And I was telling Greg about this. Like, I loved that. I mean, it felt like it was 15 minutes of, and it did that thing where you couldn't sprint.
Yep.
And whenever
Yeah.
you can't sprint, you
know.
know shit's about to get
Right.
real. And like when you
about to
get on the
get
boat
real.
and you go and you start seeing all the different characters and hear the voices and stuff, I had a moment where I'm like, are they just teasing and we're not gonna get it? And even that I would have been satisfied with.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
because I feel like that just like it's the idea of it, but like I loved him not needing him. But then the moment he got him, I'm like, oh my god, this is so hype.
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing. I echo everything they're saying, and it was that thing of it was basically media blackout outside of the trailers I'd see at the trade shows where we'd have to talk about it or whatever, going down to play it. So as entering in with as little information as I had, because I already knew what I saw, I already liked what I saw. I never stopped to dream and think. You know what I mean? I was very much like, oh, I'm gonna fight Odin and I'm gonna fight Thor, but I was like, oh, that's the weapon. They're distancing themselves from that. I love how even playing it when there's callbacks to it and there's Kratos is wrestling with what to say or what to do and all these different things and making references that obviously talk about his past or make him think about his past. It was like cool. I never anticipated that happening, and maybe that's stupid, and maybe every hardcore God of War fan was like, "We clearly are going to get the blades again." But when it finally happened,
Thanks to the ESRB, some people already knew.
yeah, see, and so like when he starts,
Oh, really?
Yeah.
wrestling with this in the trophy list too, and all those other different,
Yeah,
little
the trophy
things.
list.
Yeah. But when he got there, like for me, sight unseen, and he's like, I know of one weapon that can, and it was like, oh wait, really? And then he's like wrestling with it, and then him getting on, and then again like. Athena, who this is the first time I'm talking about Athena like in a positive light, just talking about it. Usually I was like, Athena, Calliope. It's just like, that's all when I'm making fun of Kratos. But for her to pop up and he'd be like, get out of my head, and like, da-da, and you're a monster. And he's like, I know. And like, to go and unwrap him and put him on. And then all of that, the powerfulness of him wrestling with it to then be mixed with us having it and having like, holy shit, this game plays completely differently now. To go from the axe, which was very methodical, I'm gonna hang back and engage you this way, to be like, I'm here to fuck shit up now.
And I shouldn't have assumed that it was gonna be half-assed. Like, I see the blades and I'm like, oh, we're gonna get this weapon for the final few fights and that's it. But it's like, oh, they have their own upgradable skill tree. Fuck, Jesus Christ.
And I
this
felt like
game.
the game was so well designed with each weapon in mind for like the big chunks of the game that you had. Because like once I got the blades, I stuck to the blades. I feel like the game really led me in a way to be like, all right, use the axe for this amount of time, use the blades for this amount of time, and then for the final third, mix between the two when you want. And I'm like, God, this is so damn
It's depending
good.
on the enemies, right? Like the
Some enemies. I mean, Boulder also switches between the ice
Fire
and
and
fire,
ice, yeah.
forcing you to kind of do this. But yeah, there's the combat team, the engineering team, the animation team, the sound team. Like none of those creators are even remotely half-assed. Like no matter how much I would be like, we need to get some of this done. They are perfectionists. You know, they are the sort of inspiration, I think, throughout the day for me to try to be better at what I do, right? So it's amazing, like, but it was scary as hell because the blades weren't done until like the last year. So we're talking 3.5 years of development on the axe, and I'm just like, guys, we got to get to work.
Yeah,
man.
that's more of the thought that I had, in like in terms of just game development cycles and like knowing that, like how well implemented are these blades actually going to be, and then seeing them and just. This fucking game, man.
They always pull around
Earlier
on
you were
that.
talking about how in the other God of War games, it's like no weapon would compare to the blades. With the Leviathan axe, it's like that thing might be the best weapon I've ever used in a video game. Like it's so fun to use. No matter how many times I threw the thing, it still felt satisfying. And like it's all the things combined. It's the sound design of it coming back to you. It's the controller's vibrations. Like,
Dude, every time it comes gunk and like I feel my hand jerk back with
Yeah.
it. Like
Yep.
that's how good it felt to throw
It
and
is
grab.
and I
Amazing.
feel that the decision to have the triangle button be the return and it wasn't like a boomerang automatic thing. It gave it such
Agency,
agency.
purpose.
Like you had control over these
Yes.
moments happening.
I actually went back and forth with them a lot on this because their first instinct was the button recall. And then they were starting to want to introduce, say, oh, nobody wants to hit the button to recall. And I'm like, are you kidding? This is the coolest part of this. I feel like I'm way more in control. I can make choices that are completely fluid and completely sort of non-deterministic, right? And they're like, no, people really like the whole automatic boomerang thing. So we went back and forth, and it did become a point where I just had to say, like, I don't care. We are doing the triangle button. We are not changing it. And I think eventually then people started to see, oh, no, we can do even more.
Yeah,
That
the puzzles sort of fit in with that as
Yeah.
the
well.
forcing function basically made them go like, oh, okay, now I will go even further on this one. And part of it is that perfectionist of like, that was their first instinct. So they're like, certainly it can't be right. because we did triangle button right away. That was our first like prototype had the triangle button. So clearly that's wrong and we have to change it, right? And like, no, you hit on something amazing. So part of, I think my job also is that when we find something good is to just keep people from noodling with it in certain ways. And it's like, make this better, but don't change that part. That part is amazing, right? And it just took years for us to get to the point of going, oh no, oh I get it, right? Getting the right sound design in, the right visual effects in, and the animations to kind of match. Because, you know, initially you try to prototype something, it doesn't look that great, and you have to kind of squint your eyes and go like, oh, okay, this is going to be great.
For me, it's what the old God of War games, which were great in combat, and I always applaud them for that. But I never, this is what I always felt like for certain players, that's what it was. Where for me, every button press, everything I'm doing is choreographed, and I know what I'm about to do, rather than in God of War where it was like just, or, you know, the old God of Wars, the trilogy, jumping up and spinning around and doing whatever. Here it was a very defined choice of throw the axe that way, break out the blades, kill this, go back hand to hand. Now I'm gonna smash him this way. All right, cool. Ooh, I just unlocked this new ability that I've powered up to, you know, throw ice along the ground and have that spike up. I want to use that here. Like going through to that minute detail where it was, you know,
becomes more methodical.
Exactly. And so many
You're
people
older and you're smarter.
and
now.
so many people
You're more
talk about
methodical.
me and Kratos. Exactly.
Yeah.
But
That's
so-
what I'm saying. It's, honestly, that is a little bit of that.
Well,
is
so
that-
many games try to do that where they're like, oh, play your way, and we give you all this stuff, and it just turns out to be like, all right, cool, I've found the two skills I like, and that's what I use.
yeah.
Whereas this game was about experimenting, changing, doing different things. You know, having Atreus go from, I'm not going to put any of my upgradables into him. He just sits there and like yells, which is good, but I don't need him for anything. But then when it started unlocking his tree, and it was like, oh, he can spawn like a whole bunch of wolves to
Those
attack
wolves
people.
are so clutch.
Oh,
dude.
okay, then yeah, all right, I'm
Yeah.
gonna do that, and I can make his arrows cost more damage.
I also loved like the being able to play how you want. It goes all the way just to the options. I really appreciate the ability to change your controls because that's something that I wish every game did, and I feel like this game does very well. And I did change them. I ended up changing the shoulder buttons to be flipped.
classic. Or you
Not
flipped
classic.
them?
I didn't go classic, but I flipped them so that heavy
Yeah.
was on R1
Yep.
and then R2 was more hack and slashy. And I switched the circle and X just because it dodging with circle felt more natural to me. But then also the difficulty level, being able to maybe it was that, but being able to switch whenever I wanted with the difficulty was huge because I accidentally was playing on hard in the beginning and I was having a real tough time with some of the bigger fights and I was like, oh man, I was starting to
pretty
break. I'm like, this is hard. You know, like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, oh man. And then but then I looked and I was like, I'm gonna go to easy and see how it is. And I realized I was on hard. So I went to normal. But then as I started unlocking more skills, I pushed back up to hard and I played majority of the game on hard and it was awesome. Because it's like I feel like the combat is so methodical and it is so in your control that I was like, I want to do this.
You beat
Like,
Cuphead, dude.
I did beat Cuphead.
you did beat
But then there was fights towards the end. I'm like, I'm just going normal just because I want to get this
Yeah,
beat.
if I
but I
may-
love that I could switch back and forth.
Do you have a cheat code where I could beat the Valkyries?
I was just saying to interject, fuck these Valkyrie fights. God, I'm like, I'm such a badass. I'm so great at this game. And then every time a Valkyrie kicks my teeth in, I'm like, God fucking damn.
The point of the Valkyries was that sense of we will let you get there early, and we will let them whoop your ass, right?
Yeah.
There is a game I played a while ago, Yid 7.
Oh, yeah.
And right when you come out of the first town in that game, there's this little like branching path to this gigantic brontosaurus looking creature, right? It hits you once, you have like 120 health, and it takes off like 1,580 health, right? Like on one hit, you're like, oh, cool, that's awesome. Like immediately I'm presented with something that lets me know I have a long way ahead of me. And the Valkyries were that concept of even when you finish the game and you're starting to do a lot of stuff exploring the world, you really have to be on point, right? Like these are the hardest of the hard, and some of our most devious combat designers put that together.
Yeah, I
WEA
doubled back to them
actually-
after beating it. I was like, all right, here we go. I was like, well, no, I'll come back to you. And I'm just doing all the mist. Just I'm like gonna get every chest, get every portal, and then I'll worry about it.
It requires you to be like fully upgrading rage, getting resurrection stones, using the perfect sort of loadout armor
Exactly.
for that.
That's
character.
what I've been going up against them, right? And getting then I'm come back like, what are they using? Go in, change all my stones in there to make sure I need flame resistance. I need this kind of attack. Yeah.
I killed the
that-
one in Alpha and I was just like, I almost threw my controller at the wall. So furious.
After you beat it.
No, I mean after like the 7 or 8 times that it like,
Oh, yeah.
the fucking jump up in the air, like oh shit, I didn't dodge it. Like,
You
yeah.
stop and you're like, son of a
You
bitch.
asshole.
God damn it. Yeah.
we haven't even really been asking. We've just been like
Yeah, well, we got our own
gushing.
questions. We're all
Yeah.
over it.
That's
We're
true.
all part of it. Don't
That's
worry
true.
about it. I mean, what do you want to know? I mean, I forget. At the party, did I talk to you about the thing that happens when you beat the final Valkyrie?
Yes.
Okay, cool. That's a good one too.
That's a good one. What are you talking about?
Huh?
Do you want to mention it?
Yeah, sure. Because
Does
it's a
Tim
spoiler
know?
cast. Tim's never gonna get there. This is way harder than Cuphead. He can't do this.
Sure.
So Freya, huh?
Yeah,
She's the ultimate Valkyrie.
she is in the myth too.
Yeah.
She is the sort of queen of the Valkyries, the Shield Maiden, and it's interesting to see that as you go through everything, all these characters have deeper connections, deeper sort of roots in everything that's happening. And sometimes you're expecting it, sometimes you're like, oh, that's interesting, right? But it's all continuing to be set up, and it's like Freya is one of my favorite characters because
She's awesome.
we've set up this origin story that has both sort of tragedy and then, you know, kind of getting knocked down, and this feeling of like there is a mountain that is going to be ascended by her, and it's like you can just sort of feel what is that next thing going to be. And it's like what I love is that I think everybody's going to interpret a different way of where they think it's going to go, right? That final speech, Danielle Basutti, who did the sort of performance of Freya, just utterly nailed that last speech to Kratos and Atreus and set the stage for something I think that's going to be wonderful.
Was there anything? Some of this may be going into territory that you don't want to talk about because you might be saving stuff. But was there anything that you thought, fuck, I really wish we could fit this in? Aside from like the UI, sort of the in-game UI stuff.
There was a bunch of stuff that I had to cut in the second and third year that we started ending up realizing it was
takes so
maybe a
long to
little
make
too
these
big,
games.
right? Like people are like, this is ridiculous. The game's too big. I'm like, come on, it's like 10 hours. Don't worry about it. It's fine. And then there was a point for a year that I was in scoping meetings every week, right? And that was just me feeling and not correctly feeling this way. The producers are utterly amazing on this project, but I would always feel sort of embattled. Like it was like me versus the world, right? And that's just my weird conspiracy theory, fear brain speaking. Everyone was looking out for the betterment of the game, right? But I was always like, no, my toys, don't take my toys. But I think everything we did get rid of was for the better, even though it was wonderful. There's some amazing level designs that we just could not realize. Muspelheim was 2/3 larger than it was. That's a 1/3 level that we ended up with, simply because, hey, we ran out of time and we're like, all right, you know what? We can still make this. This still works.
Was it going to be the same idea?
The same thing. It was just a much bigger volcano. So like it was just huge, and the time it took to get up there was amazing, and it felt like this sort of epic journey in and of itself, but it also was fairly unrealistic for us to get done in the time frame that we had. So we made smart calls that were at the time feeling hard, but like I said, they felt, everything sort of happened for a reason.
Cool.
But from a story perspective, from a sort of mechanics perspective, and just the overall feel of the game, this is the first thing I have ever worked on where I feel like it is done. Right. And that's weird because I know a lot of people say on the creative side, like nothing's ever done. You just sort of get forced to put it out. And I do feel like a lot of other projects I've had that where it's like, nah, I wish I could have had another year on it. Not only from a health perspective that I don't wish I had another year on this, but I think from just the feeling of satisfaction. Like I played through this game so many times and I've never made something where at the end I felt satisfied. Right. That I felt like, oh, this is good. Like, I'm not sure if anybody else is going to like it, but like, I feel good about this. I feel like we got like the initial vision, right? The first PowerPoint I presented 4 weeks after coming back to Santa Monica in August of 2017, right? Which was like, here is the core tenets of this. And I look back on it and I actually did a presentation to the team right before we were done that basically I pretended as if I was giving that pitch 4 weeks in. So I just stood in front of the team. They had no idea what I was doing, and I just started saying, hey, thanks, Scott, for coming. I'm going to give you an update on the God of War game. So here's our plan for the next few years, right? Like a few years, because I really did think it was going to be a couple of years. Yeah, we'll get it done in 2 years, no problem. And it was amazing when you really look at it. You go like, wow, what we set out to do, we did, right? We sort of stuck to our guns. We fought hard, and we worked our guts out, and I feel like we reached a point where every one of us was proud of the thing that we did. And I kept saying to people, that's what I want. Regardless of the response out with the people, it would be amazing that every one of us is proud. Like, I want to tell my son about this. I'm proud to tell my wife what I did. I'm proud to show her what I did. And that, I've worked on some pretty crap games in the past, and not the God of War games, but like, Backyard Wrestling. I'm looking at you, kid.
I remember.
Yeah, right. Roger's talking robots. And again, everybody worked their ass off on those games. They're not,
Sure.
they're not for lack of people trying. They're just, trying to make a game in 6 months. Like, not exactly the easiest thing in the world. But now I'm to a point, like this one, I don't know. I don't know if I can ever repeat it.
I'm
sure
so
they want you
happy
to.
that you recorded your reaction to the reviews. It's videos like that, those just like wholesome gifs, like all that stuff. I love that so much.
Oh,
and like
thank
seeing your reaction to it, it's so genuine that it's so heartwarming. And it's like, I love that within 3 seconds, you see your eyes go from like, oh, thank God, to, oh, really? To fuck yeah. It's so great.
I didn't expect that reaction. Like, I did it simply because I was like, I love reaction videos. I sort of consume them obsessively now, thanks to E3 2016. So I was like, oh, I should try that, right? And I mentioned to somebody, I'm like, oh, I might try that when I read the reviews. And they're like, oh, you should totally do it. I'm like, all right, cool. And I have this ritual where anytime anything comes out that reviews are there, I am sequestered. I go away from everybody, have a little whiskey and just sit and consume what it is, whether good or bad. I sort of take it all in. And I'm in a hotel in Sydney by myself. I just had an awesome day at Everleigh Station where we were casting axes and blacksmithing, and I'm carrying around 1100C crucibles of brass and stuff like that. Just imagining I'm the asshole who drops it and burns the guy who's a blacksmith. And thankfully, no, I was not that guy, but I was afraid that I was. And
Instead, it was Lucy O'Brien who burned somebody.
So and I got back and just did it thinking, oh, whatever, I'll probably never use this.
Yeah.
And definitely, that thing was like 15 minutes long, and most of it was just me like not being able to collect myself. But
It was awesome.
I think it's cool. Like, it's awesome that people are responding positively, right? I really did show this because I wanted my son to see that it's okay to show emotion, to be vulnerable.
Right.
I think that's an awesome lesson for him. I think there's a part that I wasn't really seeing until recently, that I think part of it was for my wife, that she sees me as somebody who doesn't show emotions. I try to be the calm person in the chaos, and I think that's bad, and I think maybe a part of it is an apology to her that I don't open up enough. Like, she truly is sort of the North Star for me, and I would never make it through any of this without her. And I think, unfortunately, my son hasn't even seen it because he's in kind of a sad place now. It's interesting. He loves bugs, he loves salamanders, but he's afraid of flies. And the weather is changing in Sweden right now, so there's a lot of flies, and it's just emotionally very challenging for him to see flies. It's the weirdest thing, right?
It was just in conflict, yeah.
Right. So that conflict is basically saying, she's like, I don't know if I want to show him because I don't know if he'll understand that it's a happy thing. And we haven't explained it. And I said, that's all right, because I'd like to watch it with him. I'd like to talk about it. And they're thankfully coming back in May. I'm so excited.
How long have they been gone?
Since January.
Oh, wow.
I've seen them for 3 days.
Oh my God.
Over the last 4 months. And it's been exceptionally trying. I kept trying to tell her that, no, you know what, I'm going to be working a lot. It's totally fine. You guys are better off there. But there's a piece of me that's missing.
Sure.
It's been missing for months.
Totally.
And it was an amazing thing after the Norway event to see them for 3 days in Sweden, but it was also super sad, right?
Yeah,
because
the clock's ticking. I know I'm going to go.
Clock's ticking, and like the day before I had to fly out, I had to leave it really early in the morning the next day, and Hilo finally understood that Daddy was going away.
Wow.
And he just sort of buried his head in my wife's chest, and then kind of got up and went into the other room and closed the door. Ugh. And it broke my heart. Like, I was just like, oh, what's going on? And she's like, yeah, he doesn't like to be sad in front of us anymore. And I was like, oh, I'll go talk to him. And I opened the door. He's like, go away. I was like, oh, man.
Boy.
Right.
There's a lot you can learn from this game called God of War.
It is, yeah. It's like, I really feel like as creators, we do have a tiny bit of a responsibility to connect to people and perhaps share something, perhaps help elevate people just a little bit. And I think I've never done that in anything I've previously done.
We've definitely done that here.
Thank you. I mean, I'm glad that people are responding positively.
No, I think not only in the message of the game, the lessons learned there of seeing Kratos mature, or seeing Kratos deal with emotions and how to be a father and all these different struggles, that I think he comes out obviously better on the end. Like, even But like, because that was my fear of playing the game, is that it would always be the,
Right.
him not touching the boy. Like, oh, come on.
It's
And
all
like,
about
we address it so early on and continue to address it and continue
Yeah.
to see him evolve, change in the way he interacts with him. But then to the reaction video, whether you knew it or not, I think that's so important to what it is to be a creator in 2018 and what it is to be a video game developer in 2018, in the way that I think it's been getting better for a while, but more and more, and thanks to videos like this, people are understanding that there are people behind the games. That you know what I mean? People are starting to understand the sacrifices that people make to make these projects and games. And for a while, I think it was something that didn't get represented really well in the media, and because it's hard to write that when you're reviewing a game. And we weren't doing personality interviews for the longest time. But you see that now, and then to see, I know Kotaku put up, or maybe it was GameSpot, maybe both, collected all the other studios congratulating you, right, on how well God of War. And it's like, there's another great thing. See, it's not a console war. It's not this. These are human beings who all hang out and go to DICE and see each other in between their projects and make something awesome. And
We have an amazing community. I mean, I'm so privileged, I think, to be part of making games with the people who make games now.
Yeah.
Because we all intensely love the thing we do. And it's not that like, oh, we just love telling stories. No, we love making games. We understand that our field is different from TV and movies, and that we are just, I think, truly getting our sea legs to understand the power that we have and the connections that we can make to people. And it is amazing to see other studios, be able to say, hey, great job.
Yeah.
Right? Because I mean, I'm the giant fan of all of these people. So every time they make a game, I am in awe. Right, I completely fanboy out on all of these amazing creators, right? Because I'm part of this community, right? I feel very connected to everybody. So it's amazing that we can perhaps get back to a little bit of what, almost like what GDC used to be, right? I keep saying this, like GDC used to be that like get together and go, how did you do that?
yeah,
Oh, that was amazing. How did you do that? It's like I brought the game over to show Neil just because I'm super in admiration of him and everything they do over at Naughty Dog. And it was unexpected, but also expected. Of like, we went into their screening room and a bunch of people from the team came in and were like, how did you do that? What were you doing on the texture maps there? Were you doing maps on this one? And it was like, they were asking me a bunch of stuff that I had no clue about.
you're like, no, I signed a team and they just make it happen.
And I was like, man, I really wish I'd have brought some other people here, because that is what's so awesome, is that we look at each other's work and we go, how did you do that? What were you doing there? What were you thinking? Right? And I think, to me, that's how we make great things, is that we challenge each other, we inspire each other, and we also elevate and help and lift each other up, right? That we are not in competition, right? Perhaps there is the friendly internal competition.
Sure.
We all want to be the best. But honestly, for me, I am just so enamored with ever being considered a colleague of any of these people. It's amazing. Right?
Just answer every question with volumetric fog.
Volumetric fog.
That's all you gotta say, yeah.
Or subsurface
More
scattering.
gaming.
For
Yes.
the longest time on the project, everybody knew I had no clue what subsurface
Do y'all
scattering
know what
was.
subsurface
but
scattering is?
No.
It's when you could see through the ear, like when light is behind it, or through different skin.
Check out the big brain on Brad over here.
Andy used to be a developer.
Former game developer, Corey.
fantastic.
He made
Guys.
the
Worked
sled
on
in
two
DC Universe
massive
Online.
games.
I had to have that explained to me multiple times. Just like the Twitch thing, right? I am a little bit, thick. I don't connect to a lot of stuff now because I'm so heads down working on the game. But we were in the car and Aram showed me the screenshot of Twitch saying, hey, look, God of War's on Twitch #1. I'm like, oh, cool, nice. Didn't really get
What
it.
does that mean?
Didn't really equate to me, but I was like, yeah, I'm not totally pretending. Like, that half of my job is just pretending I know what I'm talking about. Then I get back to the studio, and I'm walking past a bunch of people, and they're like, hey, man, how about that Twitch thing? I was like, yeah, right on. And then Eric's like, yeah, the Twitch thing's cool. Eric Williams just looks at me. He knows me better than so many other people knows me, and he sees the vacant expression in my eye when I say, like, yeah, that's cool. He's like, you don't get it, do you? I'm like, all right, no one else is right. Yeah, I don't get it. Can you explain it to me? He had to explain it to me.
Close the door, Eric.
Yeah. It's like, breaking
You're
it
our Nick
down.
Scarpino. So.
Right. And he was just like, look, this is what's up. Like, it's all multiplayer games. Like, take a look at all these things here. Like, for a single player game, in an age of the death of single player games, it is the #1 thing streamed, even if it's only for 1 or 2 days. That's like, take that,
Yeah,
I think it is proof positive that, you make something that you care about, you make something that people resonate with, and it doesn't matter. Great multiplayer games, great single player games, great cooperative games, they are consumed by people who love games, right? But clearly, I have no idea what Twitch is all about. So I need to learn more.
Twitch.tv/kindoffunnygames. Do you have Amazon Prime by chance?
I do.
If you have Amazon Prime, you have Twitch Prime. You get to give away a free 30-day subscription. We'd love to have it at Kind of
That's
Funny
fantastic.
Games.
That's totally just organically blended into the
I'll
episode.
put it in incognito mode. You can log into Amazon. I'll give you a subscrition to us. It'll be
That
fun.
is so
man.
fantastic.
I'll always be pitching.
Here's I want to get through some of the reader stuff. We'll go faster in a little bit. And I'm going to end at 10:30 if that works for everybody. I think you said we had us for 2 hours, right? Perfect. All right, great. My question for you is a hard one, kind of ambiguous, but stick with me.
I like these.
What is next? You said you've been talking about, you went too far, you're going to do the next game kind of thing. Is that the plan? Do you have in your head, is this now a trilogy? Is it as long as it takes? My one request is, and I think we're probably on the same page, don't do DLC.
I don't have any DLC plans.
Okay, good.
Because I wanted everything, like, I didn't want a DLC to feel like, oh, well, I'll save this for DLC. I was like,
Right.
no, I didn't save anything. We didn't leave anything on the field, man. We put it all in there.
I struggled with this, I think on a Games Daily, talking to either Andrew or Jared about it, the question came in of like, do you think there'll be DLC? And I'm like, I hope not. And then I was like, well, it's not because I don't like the game. It's that, and at IGN we used to always say, a 10 out of 10 doesn't mean it's perfect. It means it's a masterpiece. I truly believe this is a perfect game. And I think it is so complete and so well done. And the fact that I am now, 10, 15 hours into it post credits, post story, where it's always still clawing behind my eyes that I just want to go play it. Like, I think there's so much in there that is a perfect game that there's nothing more you could add on or do or unlock any other realms for that. I don't want that. I'd rather see your story continue the other way and let this exist as it is.
The things that you couldn't access are part of a larger plan.
Okay.
Right?
Fantastic.
That for me, we had mapped out really a good understanding of where we want to go. That doesn't mean we sort of have a script for the second game done or anything like that.
Sure.
But, I think the idea of supporting the game a little bit, a lot of people have been saying New Game Plus, like something I wanted a while ago, but as everything was coming together, it was like certain things just didn't make the cut. And part of what we built in this one was that Castlevania flipping of the castle in the middle, right? That it felt like while the core story's done, I didn't want a differentiation between the core story and everything that you could do in the world. It had to feel just as connected, just as much attention paid to it, so that when you got to that point, you're like, okay, this is the end of the game. Wait, no, it's not the end of the game, right? It is that feeling I had when I first played Symphony of the Night, and I was like, whoa, what?
Yeah.
I loved how that was done because I feel like there's, especially in the age of Marvel movies and stuff, of post-credit scenes, and people kind of know what to expect from all of that.
Biggest post-credit scene ever.
And I love that though, and I feel like it segues so nicely where you're playing through, you have this big final battle, and then when you go through and it calms down, and you're doing that walkout. When the credits start rolling, but you're still playing, I was like, this is such a brilliant decision because it feels like it's not actually ending. You just you get the end credits, so you're that thanks for playing thing, but then it's also like, so where do you want to go now? Like, oh, let's go do this. And there's like, they're already giving you ideas of like where you should go. It's like, oh, you should go home, or you can do this. And then you go home and do all that stuff, and that's Thor. Are you freaking kidding me?
I love that it wasn't the end screen with like, you can continue Commander Shepard's adventures.
Congratulations on beating God of War.
Yes or no, right?
There's still more stories to see here.
Yeah. The funny part was that I was texting Greg about this. It's like I had rolled credits. I don't know what day it was, but then 3 days later, again, I'm not the type of person to ever jump back into a game just because when I'm done, I'm done. And I want to move on to something else. But I enjoy the combat so much, whereas in a lot of games that have these phenomenal like cinematic experiences and stuff like that, I feel like I'm moving from cutscene to cutscene because I'm so invested in the story. But I love the combat in this game so much, and it's so addicting, and it feels great that I wanted to keep on playing. So I'm playing like 3 days later after I beat it, and then I was like, oh, I haven't gone home. And then I go home and I experience that, and I just texted Greg like, now I just rolled credits, and holy fuck, what an awesome moment. And that's like, again, like this awesome Marvel sort of cutscene that
was the experience that I wanted, was that sense that I didn't want to put a marker on the map. I didn't want to force you. I wanted to mention it in a cinematic that, come, let's go home. And then if you choose, you have that moment of, oh, I haven't done this yet, right?
Yeah.
And then you get the surprise. Because I feel like it is only a little tease, but that little tease is so much more potent when it feels like you were the one who had the agency to go home, as opposed to like, oh, you're forcing me to go there. We had a little bit, I think people were like, oh, people aren't going to know to go home, so we really directed them to it. and there was a bit of a ho-hum response simply because they were like, oh, you forced me to go all the way back
Hand-holding,
here.
yeah.
Right. And I was like, that's the magic of everything in this game is that we don't force you to do it. Give a little bit of information. If you choose to do this, you get that sense. I discovered this.
Agency.
Right? Yes. Agency and a feeling of ownership over the discovery. Like I had so many moments in previous games that I've played throughout my life that I felt like I was the only one who found this, right? And I know my sort of logical brain said like clearly everybody else found this, but you feel so much more invested when it's like no. I'm the first foot here,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
that's amazing, right? It's the modern day or the past equivalent of like first post, right?
Yeah.
That feeling of, like,
First.
right?
And then once you have that little fucking firestone that feels really good and sounds
yeah,
great when you hit the glass, like just all of that feels so great, and the sound of it, like I want to kind of do it on my own, you know. But then you find out that like, holy shit, there's all these doors that I never open. Like,
Yeah.
it's just so great, man.
Yeah,
So
Metroidvania.
fucking awesome.
in 3D,
Exactly.
It's very, very cool.
Exactly.
Also, shout out to the head, man.
Mimir, I was gonna say,
Character of the game.
dude, so
Yes.
fucking
Such
rad.
a good decision to have an extra character. Me and Kevin were talking about how cool it is that, you know, for so long it's Kratos and Atreus talking back and forth, and you kind of get used to the dynamic. The moment he's introduced is just like, great, now we can get exposition in a way that doesn't feel forced,
Right.
but it's fun, and like can be more joking and like shit talking, and
It feels like
God.
somebody's telling you the casual story of what happened between these gods the other day at a party.
Yeah,
right?
the amount of times there's where I'm going, and I'd row up, and he's still talking. I'm like, well, we're just gonna chill
Right.
out.
Yeah,
we're just gonna wait.
exactly.
This is too good of a story. I'm enjoying it
Yeah.
too much.
I'm so glad. Was there? I hope there wasn't. But was there ever a decision to add combat in the boat? Because I'm glad there's not.
Oh my god, that is amazing that you should say that, sir. Thank you, everybody. Pay
Number one
attention to
games
that
journalist.
Number one games journalist, guys.
Right? Yeah, there was combat was one of the things cut. The boat was very controversial through the development of this project. A lot of people hated the boat. There was some loathing for the boat, and I initially wanted swimming, but you know it was 3D navigation of an AI partner when you're already dealing with the 2D navigation of an AI partner.
Just put
was-
Atreus on a little pallet.
Right.
Swim
Put it on a little
around.
pallet, right? And it was basically just a
riding
bridge
on your
too
back.
far, right? It was like, there's no way we can do this. Technically, it's going to be difficult. We can do it. It's not impossible, but it would mean that you're sacrificing someone else or something else. And I said, all right, fine. I'll give it up because in the boat, we can connect more. We can have them go in there and we can tell stories and all this kind of stuff. So the idea of doing that was from the beginning, but we always wanted exploration narrative or narrative exploration combat. Right, and combat was the third thing that eventually, as we started to scope more stuff out, the combat became ejected from it. That it was like, no, I think this could be strong enough, but the boat didn't feel good for years. So everybody kept going, I'm looking at you, boat. This is terrible. Like this is the one thing we don't need to do. Boat of war. But you know, there's a lot of flying leaps you take. I think at the beginning of a project that you just have to sort of, if you believe in it, you got to push through it, even if everybody's doubting it, and then find those 3 or 4 people who are like, I'm going to make this thing sing, right? And I think that's the key to this team is there's always something that somebody goes, you know what, I want to take that on. I want to be the one to realize this. I think I can make it amazing. And it's that sort of tenacity that they fight through any of the uncertainty and the doubt and actually make something that is amazing. I agree with you. I'm glad that we didn't have combat on the boat just because I think it created that time to enjoy stories. And it didn't click for us until your sort of example happened in playtest naturally, where people were listening to a story and they arrived where they were and they turned around and just started like circling and then doing that, and they were like, does he not know how to dock the boat?
it isn't clear for
Did the
him to
button
dock.
not come up? Everyone's getting really worried, like, oh man, they get broke and it broke, and then all of a sudden he goes over and docks. We're like, what was that? We asked him, and he said, no, he was just telling a cool story, so I wanted to wait. And I was like, yeah. All right.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And I'll get back to that later.
Yeah. Oh, dude, that's a good accent there. You got
Thanks,
that
man.
straight. Yeah,
Appreciate it,
nice
Greg.
job.
Because I feel like at any moment the boats could have felt like the elevators of Mass Effect 1.
Yeah.
Where it is just like this chore that you're doing, but you made it important, and you made me so many times not do the next thing because, again, I wanted to hear what was
Yeah.
going on. So
That's
I just feel like everything was executed so goddamn well. it's impressive that this game even works. Like,
I agree with that.
it blows
And
me
man,
away.
it's beautiful too.
Yes.
Like I got a beautiful TV, and man, this is my new standard for HDR,
Yeah.
where it's just like you need to come over and see it. It's gonna convince you to
Why
get
not?
a 4K
I mean, when we
TV,
played
man.
at the thing, it was
Yeah.
It's just so nuts.
Yeah.
To see the,
I mean,
the
technical
differences
and art
between
team
light
is
and dark.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's really funny is I don't know if this was mentioned the first time you were here, but our community manager Joey Noel, the person who introduced her to Kind of Funny's content is an environment artist, Galen, and he
Oh, wow.
worked on the game. So that was a really cool connection. And the first time I met him was at E3, and growing up in game art, like I went to school for game art, and somebody that I idolized was Raf Grassetti. And I every day in class we were
I
looking
also
at
idolized
we
Raf
were looking
Grassetti.
at his blog, and it's just like, how the fuck does he make it? Yeah, he worked on Mass Effect 2 as well. Jesus, how did he make that? And he just posted something 2 days ago. Now he already has this thing. The guy's a fucking a genius at what he does or whatever. So it was
He's a wizard.
Yes, exactly. So
Yeah.
it was really cool connecting with Galen, talking about fuck, you work with. Because he walked up to me and was like, "Oh, you work with Greg? How's that?" I'm like, "You work with Raph? How's that?" It was a really cool moment, and yeah, I
You're
thought
both
that was
disappointed.
That's some inside baseball kind of funny.
You're braced while you cry.
You're both geniuses.
I have been called that. I want to get some questions in here. Final
let's do
10
it.
minutes. It'd be as fast as you want to be. You
right.
know what I mean? Tin Man 215. Remember, if you want to be part of the show, follow Kind of Funny on Twitter.
What up, Tin Man?
Twitter.com/kindoffunnyvids. Says, was there any particular reason you made Kratos always call his son Boy, but when there was trouble, he would call him by his name? This was a great game, by the way. Congrats on all the success. P.S. Is Kratos the world serpent? There have been fights on the Reddit about this.
Ooh, wow, interesting theory. All right, first and foremost, Boy was born first of me not procrastinating and not coming up with Atreus' name, and then I had a hook that he was going to call him by his name for the first time at the end of the game. So the reveal of his name would be the Atreus, which is where when we started realizing the Loki thing, that's when we said, oh, we're reversing now. We're going back. So it wouldn't be he calls him Boy the whole time and then refers to him that. And I was like, you know what? This is great because it makes us realize son is the sort of moniker that I think is the personal connection. When he refers to him as my son, he takes... And not in the weird way of ownership, but he takes ownership of the role of being his father. He acknowledges his son as being his son, I think, for the first time. And that was super important to have that moment click. And I think all the things that just sort of fell into place made that happen the right way that it needed to. Is Kratos the world serpent? No. Because you've seen him in the same place at the same time.
But he got kicked through time or whatever. Remember, the world serpent exists kind of all over the place. That was the big
That's
thing you guys said in your
true.
game. And then Kaz,
That's-
Kaz here says in the same thing. So, as the serpent is Loki's, Atreus' son. That's in traditional myth, correct?
That is the myth.
Okay.
Yep.
Is he going to be born as Kratos dies? And indeed, Kratos being sent back in time to help them stop the true ending of Ragnarok explains the beard and the white and the red scales on the world serpent.
All right. All right, that's a lot of stuff, and most of it is potentially
Spoilers, Nick.
Spoilers for the future.
No, Nick, didn't you hear Nick beat the stranger and put down his controller? And he was like, that's a great game. The best 20 minutes of his
Nick
life.
beat the stranger, and he put down the controller and said, "I am the god of war."
He said that.
Cause I could tell you that all these things are going to be answered in the future, but
Ooh-wee.
we've set a lot of things in motion with this game, and we intend to sufficiently answer every one of these things.
Maybe it's Loki, because Loki loves animals.
Them snakes.
Right?
Oh, he does love snakes. Yeah, we learned that in Thor Ragnarok.
loves
By the way, you got to watch the movie.
I really do have to watch
Somebody
that.
buy Thor Ragnarok
It's
for this
so
guy.
funny.
Kenny wrote in to twitter.com/kindoffunnyvid and said, I'd like to hear about the Souls game's influence on God of War. I'm a massive Souls fan, and Bloodborne has been my favorite game of all time, and I was psyched to see how much the Souls-style combat is in God of War, not to mention the parry system, even the level of challenge on hard mode. Is Corey a big Souls fan? And if so, which games in particular?
I'm very little, so I'm a little Souls fan. I would say, for me, personally, there is an influence on the Souls series when I heard the story of Miyazaki sort of talking about the birth of these, right? That he loved D&D, and he couldn't read English, so therefore he would read the D&D books and sort of intuit from the images what the story was, and that kind of gave birth to this idea that he would have a game that you had to work a little bit, right? That it wasn't on the surface level that everything was explained to you. You sort of had to work. I thought that was awesome. From a gameplay perspective, there's a little bit of that. I think Jason McDonald, the lead combat designer on this game, is a huge fan of what he calls the game of the century, Neo. You know, there are aspects of, you know, the combat system within several games, Bloodborne, Dark Souls, and Neo as well. And even Ninja Gaiden and Onimusha, you know, these are all influences from our past and influences of games we're playing now. There are definitely touches of all of these games within some of the decision making that we have, but at no point do we ever really look at something and go, let's just make that, right? It's more like, how did I feel when I played that? How did I feel at this moment? Why did I feel like that? What did they do? Oh, that's really interesting. Could we do something like that? It all kind of boils down to like how each individual player feels when they're doing something. That is the inspiration I think we pull mostly from.
Good answer. At Rio,